Hey everyone, my name is Sara Harberson. I'm America's college counselor. It's good to be back. This is our first Facebook Live of 2022. I want to welcome all those returning viewers who have been watching these Facebook Lives with me and for the last couple of years, and any new viewers who are joining us for the first time. We welcome students, we welcome parents, family members who are helping a child or student go through the college admissions process, also college counselors from around the country. So let me know how you all are doing, where you're coming from, who you're representing here tonight, and obviously any good news along the way as well. We've got high school seniors who are in the thick of it right now, right? We are in pretty much regular decision right now, although there are some colleges that have an early decision 2 round. So you might have some questions about early decision 2, when some of these big, large public universities and private universities that have early action, when they're going to be releasing decisions. It's really any day. And then regular decision, and those decisions will come out really starting in February, but mostly in March. But we've got always younger students who are joining in, younger families, so feel free to ask those questions and we can get started. I think we've already got a bunch already, so let's get going. The first question. After the application is in at a selective liberal arts college, should the student continue to demonstrate interest, or is it just annoying kissing up at some point? Okay, so this parent is right in the thick of it, my guess, because they know what an LAC is, a liberal arts college. They're asking about demonstrated interest. Let's break this question down a little bit. Demonstrated interest is a strategy that colleges use to determine how interested a student or an applicant is in them. Not every college factors in demonstrated interest, but you will find that a lot of private selective colleges and universities absolutely will consider demonstrated interest. So it means that the admissions committee is not just looking at the student's application, they're also looking to see how much interest the student has shown that college or university along the way. If you're curious if a college factors demonstrated interest into the admissions process, you can check out a college's common data set. That is a public document that almost all colleges in this country will make available on their website, and you can go to the section on freshman or first year admissions, that's section C, and there's going to be a chart, and it will include all the things that the college will consider in the admissions process. The last thing listed on that chart is level of applicant's interest. That is admissions lingo for demonstrated interest. So if it is considered at that college or university, that means that demonstrated interest is important, and we would want students showing that along the way. It is really most important to show demonstrated interest before you submit your application. So traditionally speaking, students who show demonstrated interest are those that visit that college for an official admissions official admissions tour or information session. At this point in the pandemic, there's still a lot of colleges that are only offering virtual tours and virtual information sessions, but a lot of times those will count. If you need to sign up for them in advance, that means that they are tracking it. Some colleges, especially those small liberal arts colleges, will offer interviews, and almost always, if it's a small liberal arts college that offers interviews through their admissions office, you want to try to do that before you submit an application to that college or university, or although there are going to be some opportunities sometimes to have an interview after you submit an application, especially if you are applying to a mid-sized or larger university. Almost always those interviews happen after you submit an application and with an alumni interviewer instead of an admission staff member. So the interview is a chance to continue to show demonstrated interest sometimes. In some cases, opening up their emails can also show demonstrated interest, but the big ones are going to be a college admissions tour, college admissions information session, and an interview if available. Those are the big 3 for demonstrated interest. All right, next question. My child is a junior. The teacher in her field of interest is going on leave at the end of this month for the rest of the year. Is it okay to ask this teacher for a letter of recommendation before she takes leave? Yeah, this would be a good teacher if the student has done extremely well in the class and this teacher knows your daughter really really well. And most high school students that attend private high schools will ask teachers for letters of recommendation right around the springtime of junior year. If you go to a public school, sometimes it happens a little bit later, but I would still recommend that you ask these teachers spring of junior year, so it's perfect timing before she goes on leave. Your daughter can ask that teacher and hopefully she will say yes. Junior year teachers tend to be the ones that colleges want to hear from, and you want to be asking academic core teachers, so English, math, science, history, or foreign language teachers. Those are going to be the best teachers to write letters of recommendation. Next question. What is the proper way to list a AMC test score that qualifies for the AIM on your student's resume? Okay, so this is asking about a national math competition. So any of those future math majors, sometimes some engineering or physics majors, they tend to be really strong in math and they can get involved with these competitions. I don't typically recommend that a student indicate their score on their application for the most part. Most admissions officers aren't going to want that kind of detail, or they may not even know what a good score is on that national exam. However, there are going to be some exceptions. So MIT, for example, is going to be one that actually specifically asks for students to provide that information right on the MIT application. But for the most part, you really don't need to provide that score. A lot of times it's taken out of context and the admissions officer may not know what a good score is. Next question. How do we ensure that the College Board does not send our kids' SAT scores directly to schools? Is this an option offered by the College Board in the student's profile section? Yes, for all standardized tests that count, the SAT, the ACT, AP exams, for example, when you sign up for these exams or these standardized tests, you have the option of getting, at least for the SAT and ACT, free score reports that would be sent directly to the colleges that you list. And for a lot of students, they don't know, they don't realize what they're doing. They're taking the SAT or ACT for the first time, and they list, their top 4 choices. But the truth is that most students tend to do better their second or third time. But unfortunately, if you indicate that you want a free score report sent to Harvard, Yale, Stanford, and Princeton, and it's your first SAT or first ACT, they automatically will get that. That will be a part of your record if you decide to apply. So it's always my recommendation to not accept any of those free score reports. It's like my grandmother used to tell me, don't take anything for free. It's not worth it. And in this case, it's not worth it. You want to be able to pick and choose which scores are sent and which colleges see those scores. And for the most part, most students are going to be self-reporting their test scores right on the application, which allows them to choose the scores only that they want the colleges to see. There are a few exceptions of colleges in the country that want official score reports, but at this point, a lot of colleges are leaning heavily towards self-reported scores. Next question, should you report a 3 on the AP exam? Well, it's going to depend on a lot of things. It's going to depend on what that 3 is in. If you are applying to a highly selective college or university and that 3 is specifically connected to what you want to major in, I probably would not recommend that you report that 3, sometimes not even report a 4, especially if it is one of those highly selective colleges. There are exceptions to this. I will tell you that the University of California system is not going to disadvantage or think less of a student who gets a 3 or a 4 on an AP exam. They believe that just by taking the AP class and taking the AP exam, you are going above and beyond. But for any of those non-UC highly selective private and public universities, I'm very cautious and conservative when students are reporting their AP scores. AP scores are not required for admission, so always remember that. Always just put forth or report the scores that are going to strengthen your application. And that would be 5s Absolutely. Sometimes a 4, but I would say you want to be careful with 3s, especially if you're applying to highly selective colleges that aren't part of the UC system. Next question. What makes a school defer from early action to the regular decision pool, and are the chances slimmer when this happens? There are a number of reasons why a college would defer a student's application from early decision or early action to regular decision. It could be that they want to see some senior year grades. Maybe the student had a dip in their grades for junior year and they want to see how the student is handling a really rigorous curriculum for senior year. It could be that they want to see how that student compares to the regular decision applicant pool. It could be a recruited athlete and that college coach is not sure about that recruited athlete's interest. It could be that admissions office ended up admitting 2 or 3 recruited athletes from that student's high school. And if they deny that student who applied early decision or early action that was not a recruited athlete, how would that look? It could be that they just frankly want to take their time. They want to defer their final decision until regular decision. So it could be a variety of reasons, but almost always you will never know what that reason is. Most admissions officers are not permitted to share specific reasons why a decision is made. Sometimes a college counselor of record can call up the admissions officer and get a little bit more detail or information about how many students were deferred and what their acceptance rate usually is. But what we're seeing across the country, especially among the selective colleges, is that the admissions officers are a lot more tight-lipped about this information than they used to be. What are your chances if you've been deferred to regular decision? Most colleges and universities are not going to give that information out. They might speak generally and say that the student's chances of being admitted in regular decision after being deferred are about the same as a student who just applied regular decision. In my experience, that's not completely accurate. In my experience, both as an admissions officer, an associate dean of admissions, a dean of admissions officer, and a dean of admissions, and a college counselor on the other side of this process, what I saw inside the admissions office and what I see now working with students all across the country is that it's usually a little bit harder to get admitted to that college in regular decision if you've been deferred. The acceptance rate, although they won't make this public, is usually a little bit lower than the overall acceptance rate for regular decision. But there are students who do get admitted. Who are those students? Those are the students who are doing incredibly well senior year in terms of taking a very challenging curriculum, and they're getting very strong grades, and almost always, if permitted, they are writing what I call an LOCI, a letter of continued interest. I've just been editing a bunch of letters of continued interest for our Application Nation class of 2022 students who've been deferred. Really, the truth is, if you want your best shot and the college permits them, I would definitely recommend writing a letter of continued interest, and you want to make that the best letter you've ever written. Next question. My son hasn't taken foreign language in high school. He's planning to take 1 year of foreign language in junior year in the community college, which I always told counts as 2 years. Also planning to take another year of it in senior year, also at the community college. Will this be an issue for selective colleges? Okay, I've been talking a lot with my new group, Application Nation class of 2023, which launched last week. All of those juniors are picking their classes for senior year, and I've talked a lot with them about my 5-4 plan. My recommendation, just to be safe, so that no matter what your major is, no matter what type of college is on your list, that you follow my 5-4 plan. You are taking all 5 academic core subjects for all 4 years of high school if possible. Now, there are going to be scheduling conflicts. There are going to be issues with your school not making foreign language available, or maybe they only go up to Spanish 2 or Spanish 3 and they don't have AP Spanish. There are always going to be some exceptions, but you really do want to try your hardest. Number one, to exhaust the curriculum at your high school before you start taking classes online at an accredited high school or at your local community college. It's really important that you use the community college if you have to, meaning there is, you've maxed out your options at your high school or you had a major scheduling conflict. But I actually prefer students, preferably, ideally, to take those foreign language classes at their high school. Now, I want them to take it 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade if possible, even if they took foreign language in 7th and 8th grade, because colleges want to see that you are as proficient as possible in that foreign language before you graduate from high school and enter college. But that doesn't always happen. So I would say at a minimum, I usually would recommend at a bare minimum taking foreign language 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. If you're taking it at the community college, it's like a college class. And so a lot is condensed into a semester. However, if you take one full year of foreign language at community college and stop there, that's not going to be enough. And I would say, again, the more foreign language you take, the better. So even though it is condensed and even though it's almost like taking, 2 years of foreign language in one semester or 1 year, I still think it would be smart to take as much foreign language as possible, no matter what your major is, no matter what colleges are on your list. Next question. Hi, Jen. What do you think if my IB candidate junior substitutes AP Psychology for IB Physics her senior year? This is a great question. So especially a lot of the public high schools, large, suburban, high-achieving public high schools across the country, sometimes they will have both the IB program and the AP program, and students can do the full IB diploma, or they can take all AP classes junior and senior year, or they can do a mix of both. What I will say is that you have to be a little bit careful because physics has been one of those classes that most highly selective colleges still want to see on a student's transcript in high school. And I would say, especially if a student is leaning towards an engineering major, they absolutely need the most physics they can possibly fit into their schedule. But really any science student, whether they're, biochemistry, any pre-med student, for example, having physics in high school is really important. So I'm not sure I would replace IB Physics with AP Psychology. I really see AP Psychology as a great class. It tends to be one of a big favorite for a lot of students at high schools across the country. But I see AP Psychology as what I call an add-on class. You can take it after you take your 5 core classes and if you have room in your schedule, or if you've exhausted all of the social science or history or social studies classes at your high school. So even if AP Psychology at your high school is considered a science, in the college admissions world, it's considered a social science, a social studies, or like a history. So I think AP Psychology can be a great class, especially if you're interested in majoring in psychology, but I wouldn't use it to replace a core academic subject like physics. I still think physics is pretty important. Interestingly, I did kind of an unofficial poll over the last couple of days with my Application Nation alumni families. We have an alumni group. So after you go through the college admissions process, you can go into this alumni group, which is a free group, and get the support of all of these families who have been through every part of the process after a student gets admitted. And I asked our Application Nation alumni members about their children in taking physics. And I specifically asked if you were a non-engineering applicant and you were applying to highly selected colleges, did your child get into some highly selected colleges? And the truth is that some of them did. But to be safe, I still recommend physics if possible. All right, next question. What are some ways to fill up my lack of leadership in school to make myself stand out? Okay. One of the most important ways to stand out in the college admissions process and in life is a little secret I call SOUNDBITE. So I hope you'll get my book, read SOUNDBITE, or become a member of Application Nation because I will help you write your SOUNDBITE. Your SOUNDBITE is something incredibly distinctive about yourself that no one else in the world could say the same thing. And that's what makes your SOUNDBITE really special. And if you are working off of this incredible, powerful, distinctive soundbite, then that is your guide. That is your identity as you go through the admissions process. Because one of the myths out there is that you have to have leadership roles or big leadership positions to get into a top college. That's absolutely not true. There are students that will get in with a lot of big leadership roles on their activities list, but there are a lot of other students who have no traditional leadership roles and are just as competitive. And that is because they follow my soundbite approach, and they follow the idea that it's not about gathering leadership roles. It's really about investing in something really important and making an impact on something in the arts, something in your community, an academic area, anything you can imagine that you love to do. I want you to think about what kind of an impact. How can you make a bigger impact with that thing that you love? And a lot of times that thing that you love is part of your soundbite. And that's how you can stand out in this highly competitive environment. Another way to stand out is to not follow what everybody else is doing when it comes to the colleges on your list, the major that you might be interested in. Even if you think you want to go to medical school, you don't have to be a science major. But also, it comes down to the topics you choose for all of your essays. I am so focused on making sure that students pick the most ideal topic for their main essay, because I know that if it passes my test, that they don't even need me to help them edit their essay, because admissions officers want to learn something really special about you. They don't want to read an essay about a topic that so many other students have written about. So a lot of times, if you have a really special topic that is truly genuine and authentic to you, it's going to come across in that essay, and that's another way to stand out. All right, next question. My daughter is a junior and she's an A student with mostly honors level classes. She has learning disabilities like dyslexia. Wow, so impressive that she's an A student taking all these challenging classes. She's concerned that admission staff may discriminate due to her transcript reflecting 2 learning centers, one ELA and one for math. Advice, please, and thank you for offering this super service. Okay, first off, this is such an important question. This is such an important thing for all of us to discuss. I'm really open about what goes on behind closed doors in those admissions committees. And I can tell you that over the years, students with learning differences have been disadvantaged or discriminated against in the admissions process. Even if that college or university has an incredible support system for its undergraduate students. What's interesting is a college campus, its student body, the support system, the faculty are usually incredibly progressive and are usually 10 steps ahead of everybody else. The admissions office, it's like going back in time. Sometimes 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years back in time. And so learning differences are still not treated fairly in the admissions process. It's sad to say, but it is my recommendation that if you do have a learning difference, but your grades and curriculum have not been impacted at all, it is my recommendation not to mention that anywhere in your application. Unfortunately, there are some high schools. It's usually a public high school. I saw one of our Application Nation class of 2024 students. I was doing a course selection review for next year for that student, and I looked at the transcript and I could actually tell that that student was on a 504 plan. That's not legal. That is a violation of the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. So it is so important that if your child goes to a high school that is indicating any support system, any support class, or any special accommodations on the transcript, that needs to be removed. Again, that violates federal law. And I can tell you, admissions officers are trained to pick that up. I can look at a transcript and immediately I pick that up as well. So it is 2022 and this process is not fair yet. I will always talk about this, write about this, and advocate for students who have learning differences, and frankly, any student who has not had a voice and has not been treated fairly in the admissions process. So I will continue to answer those questions clearly and in a transparent way, because colleges, unfortunately, have not been transparent in the admissions process. Next question. I get all fired up. I've got my jersey in me, but I'm also, frankly, I'm a mom of 3 kids, and one of my kids has learning differences, and I will do anything to make sure that all of your kids and my child are treated fairly in the admissions process. So take that, colleges and universities. All right, next question. Is it bad that first semester grades haven't been sent out to schools as of yet? I assume they will be sent in the next few days. Okay, this is a great question for current high school seniors, but also for those younger students. A lot of younger students don't realize, but halfway through senior year, almost all the colleges that are on your list are going to require first semester grades, and your college counselor of record is usually the one to submit those grades. A lot of times the colleges want those first semester grades like yesterday. But the truth is that most high schools are not finalizing those grades until sometime in January, sometimes as late as the beginning of February. So the colleges that will require first semester grades will list it on your admissions portal that you're missing that, and they will sometimes reach out to you until they will get it. Usually there's some wiggle room. I would say that most high schools will finalize and send those first semester grades the end of January and the first 2 weeks of February, and that's usually still within the time frame where the admissions committee would be able to review those grades before they make a final decision on a student's application in regular decision. There are some colleges that even if you get admitted early decision or early action, they still will require first semester grades. Here's a little tip though, even if first semester grades aren't required, every college is going to require a final transcript if you sent an enrollment deposit. So they will see your final year, senior year grades. So that's just a little plug to keep working hard and not get too much senioritis and not to drop all these classes that you had listed on your application. Next question, can a soundbite focus at least somewhat on a commitment to a sport even if the student isn't going to play in college? Absolutely. And the thing about soundbite is it changes as you evolve and as you mature. So back in the day, yeah, I was a tennis player. I even was a recruited tennis player for college, but I lasted 2 weeks when it came to playing a collegiate sport in college. So that was my identity in high school in the first 2 weeks of college, but your soundbite is going to change as you do. But if you are a high school student and your sport is really important to you and you have achieved some cool things in it, whether as as an individual athlete, part of your team, you being part of, getting a special sportsmanlike award, or you contributing in other ways, not just as a great star athlete, that needs to be a part of your soundbite. That needs to be a part of your identity, and it needs to take priority. The cool thing about soundbite, it can include extracurriculars. It can include academic interests. It can include your cultural or your ethnic background. It can include what you like to spend your free time doing. It can include the type of student you are. Are you a first-generation American? Are you a first-generation college student? All of these things that you feel make you so special, when you put them together, that's what makes your soundbite. So yes, all of that can be included. And if it's in your soundbite, you're gonna want those pieces of your soundbite to come through in your application. And if you're in Application Nation, I can definitely show you how to do that. Or you can read my book, or both. Next question, do you think any last-minute recommendation letters help or annoy the admissions representatives before January, February, March decisions, especially reach and ultra-reach schools? These questions tonight are phenomenal. This is a great question. So if you follow me or you're part of Application Nation, you know that I'm not a big fan of extra letters of recommendation. And part of that is because I've been on the college side. I've felt the pressure of having to read thousands of applications in a really short amount of time. And so I know, even though I was the most meticulous admissions officer you will ever find, I knew that I didn't have to read extra recommendation letters. I had to focus on the letter coming from the counselor of record. And for us, where I worked at Penn, we required 2 letters of recommendation from academic teachers. So adding extra letters always really weighed down the application and diluted the power of what was really required. And it distracted me from other things that were much more important. That being said, the one letter that sometimes can make a difference is when the student has a really great relationship with their principal, their head of school, or even the superintendent of their school district. And that principal, head of school, or superintendent not only knows that student really well, but can really write an unbelievable letter of recommendation. I have seen when that letter can really make a difference. But it takes a lot to reach that point, right? How many high school students know their principal, know their head of school, know their superintendent well enough, number one, to ask them for an extra letter of recommendation, and number two, that person really knows how to write a great letter of recommendation. It's hard to find. So I would say if you know that person and you know they'll go to bat for you, this is the time to ask them for an extra letter of recommendation. It doesn't necessarily make the same difference. Oh, we just paused for a second. Okay, I think we paused for a second, but we're coming back here live. Let me just make sure. Can you all give me some emojis? Let me know that you can see and hear me. Maybe the Wi-Fi connection isn't great. So I'll just wait to make sure we're doing okay. Ah, we're good. Okay. So we were talking about that letter of recommendation coming in from a principal or a head of school or a superintendent. What I was saying is it doesn't have the same effect if you submit that letter of recommendation at the time when the application is due. For some reason, it can make a nice difference if the student's been deferred or if they've been waitlisted. That letter can make a nice difference in the admissions process. All right, we'll answer a couple more questions here. My student's high school offers both the AP and the full IB diploma program. If he decides to take a mix of AP and IB classes, will this be considered less impressive than the full IB diploma program? It's interesting because we had another question where the student's high school offered both the IB and the AP curriculum. If you ask admissions officers in an information session, they will probably tell you that they look at the AP program, especially a full load of AP classes junior and senior year, and the full IB program pretty equally. You know, if you had a private conversation with you, if they no longer work in that admissions office, they probably tell you that they like that full IB diploma program a little bit more because it's super, super challenging. There are actually more classes usually. It's quite demanding. That being said, doing the full IB diploma can be very restrictive for some students, especially for science. We saw that question earlier. You know, so should the student take physics, IB physics, or AP psychology? So sometimes that full IB diploma program can really limit some students. So having a mix of AP and IB classes can be the right mix for certain students. I would say if that's the right mix for you, I would highly encourage you to talk to your college counselor of record so that they can include in the letter of recommendation, hey, listen, you know, Sara chose a mix of AP and IB classes because she wanted to take another AP science class. And if she did the full IB program, she would not be able to do that. So there are a lot of reasons why a student would have a mix of both AP and IB classes, and almost always it should still be okay. All right. Final question of the night. How important are ACT and SAT in the admissions process? My daughter is a junior and has only taken the SAT. She scored okay, but wants to take the ACT in comparison. What are your recommendations? There's a lot of good questions in here. How important is the SAT and ACT in the admissions process? Well, not as important as it used to be, and that is because of the fact that so many colleges and universities adopted a temporary test optional policy during the pandemic, and they are extending that test optional policy. And in some cases, they've already announced the class of 2023 admission cycle that they will also be test optional. So there's so many colleges out there right now that are test optional, even if it's a temporary policy that they've extended, or so many colleges have permanently adopted a test optional policy. There are even some colleges out there that are completely test blind. The University of California system is test blind, so having high test scores won't even matter. Cornell University has 8 undergraduate schools. 4 out of the 8 are test blind. So SATs and ACTs are not what they used to be, meaning that if a student doesn't do as well as they wanted, they can just look at test optional colleges, and as long as their transcript is competitive for that college, they are going to be competitive in that applicant pool. If the student already took, let's say, the SAT and they weren't happy with their score, what I would recommend before signing up for the ACT, because it's a very different test, I would recommend spending a Saturday or Sunday in the next couple of weeks taking a practice ACT on your own. Just follow the timing for each section. Obviously, if a student has approved accommodations for that test, you want to use that testing accommodation, or however you take a test, those accommodations, so that you get an accurate score as if you were taking an official ACT. And that will give you a pretty good sense of how you would do if it was a real test. And then what you can do is you can match up your official SAT scores that you've already gotten and look at the score that you got on that practice ACT. And you can look at what's called the ACT SAT conversion chart. And you can match up your scores from your SAT with the scores that you got on the ACT or the practice one, and you can see how they compare to each other. A lot of times, though, the student has a pretty good sense of which test they prefer, and I would try to stick with one test if possible. Generally speaking, most juniors will take the SAT or ACT at least one time during junior year, sometimes even 2 times. And I would say that if you're willing to take it a 3rd time, I see great results in August or September of senior year. But again, if you don't get the scores that you want on the SAT or ACT, look at the thousands of test optional colleges and universities out there. All right, on that note, I want to thank you all for being here and encourage you to be back here again for the February Facebook Live or any of my Instagram Lives. But if you really like this interaction from me and you want to get straight answers, I would highly encourage you to consider joining Application Nation Class of 2023. If you are a junior or you are a parent of a junior, or if you are a class of 2024 or 2025, you can join Application Nation, the younger group. I hope you'll join one of those groups because I am available to answer your questions every single day of the year. No vacation days for me. I also give you video seminars every single month and a lot of other opportunities to work directly with me. So I hope you'll look into it, check it out. In the meantime, have a great rest of your January, and I look forward to seeing you all back here again in February. Take care. Bye-bye.